So, hello everybody. We are very happy to be here and be able to tell you some words about our experience in this project. I think it is an important thing that we have come out with this manifesto, which is really the outcome of this common work that we were conducting for several years. I have to say, as Lars already mentioned, there was a first project where we already worked together more about the concept of the contact zone and to see what the main task can be to be able to help societies work on their inner conflicts. And now this project, which was financed by Erasmus Plus, was more about how to implement what we have already found out in the heritage contact zone in our surroundings. So we are 7 different countries, 7 different social groups or civil groups who participated in this project. And we had a common ground in the sense that we found that the contact zone as a concept is very important. I will just say a few words about what we call a contact zone. And also what was new in this project, that we tried to implement it as in a kind of a training where we tried to train future trainers. I mean people who will help in their own societies to help to discuss social problems when there are conflicting groups in conflicting heritage. So first of all, we think that the contact zone can be a space, can be an occasion, can be different social places where different groups may encounter and meet and might have different opinions, different heritage. We think that the word heritage is very important because all those memories which are either private memories, family memories, but also group memories, they really shape our present and our future. So it's very important to understand the heritage is of those groups with which we are living together in a society. And we know that the world now, and especially the European countries, are living in a situation when there are several main problems around, including demographic crisis and political crisis and economic crisis. So it's a situation where people in general may feel uneasy in their social context, and we also know that there are political forces which are even trying to make discrimination in the society harder, or to put the blame on certain social groups for not having achieved certain roles and certain results. So we think that it's very important to find those possibilities, how to fight back and how to try to create those situations where people can, in a peaceful way, talk about their problems, tell their heritage to others, so that people should understand who the other is. And it's not by chance that I'm coming from a Hungarian movement. I'm one of the founders of the Living Memorial in Budapest, which is a movement that exists. It is the 12th year that we are existing, and we are trying to fight back against the official propaganda, official very nationalistic propaganda. And it's not by chance that our symbol, if you go and see our poster, the symbol of our movement is 2 white chairs, which are put there in order to give the impression to people that they have to sit there facing each other, telling their own stories and trying to understand the problems of the other. So we think that what we have defined as a contact zone, it is something, it is a place where people can meet, and of course it's sometimes you have to wait for organizing such a situation. You have to go and find certain social groups which are not very visible, which are underrepresented, whose voice is not often heard. So there is a lot of things that people, when they organize a contact zone, they have to know about their own society. And the aim is to create a safe place for discussion, where everybody can speak up, everybody can listen to the other and try to understand the other. And we think that the policy of culture is that there should be a discussion between the different groups, and so we think that there is a dialogue of cultures which can be solved by the culture of dialogue. So we have to teach this culture of dialogue to the society. And so what the 7 groups who participated in this project did during these 2 years of cultural work was, first of all, to find the theoretical foundations of the contact zone, but also to work out and test a methodology how to deal with these problems in different contexts. And this is why it was interesting that we had 7 different countries, because they all differ about the fact that what the main problems in their societies are. So all the groups were free to decide on what topics they work, which seem to be the most important problems in their society. So we created curriculum and a handout and a handbook and syllabus, so all this can be used. They are going to be put freely online, so anybody can rely on these, use them, even modify according to their own needs and the needs of their own society. They can be translated into any of the European languages, and we think that what was very important in our project this year is the fact that we, in 6 different trainings, tried to see how this whole program worked. So we had 3 pilot trainings and then later 3 real trainings with a lot of participants, around 30 participants. And I would like to encourage you to go and speak to the representatives of these civil society groups who are present in order to ask them what happened during their trainings. It was a very interesting experience to all of us, the way people participated, the way people understood what we really meant by the contact zone. So we have very, very interesting experiences about them. You can see on the poster some of the opinions of the participants and the way the whole thing works. So I think it is really interesting to ask the representatives of these 6 groups to see how their program went. And what came out also as a need after we had all these discussions is that we should turn to the European Union and also its institutions, because we think that it's very important that there should be some encouragement for civil society participants, workers, social workers, artists, educators to continue to work in this field and try to organize their own contact zones. So we think that this is why we would like to turn to the EU, to its institutions for asking for help. First of all, how to finance these programs, especially the educative programs, because this time we were financed by the Erasmus Plus program. So we think that it's very important that in adult education, in universities, in certain programs, this kind of education should be possible for European countries in order to find solutions to their inner problems and to their heritage problems. And this is why I would like to thank Luiza, who helped us formulate those demands which we would like to address to the EU and to its officials. So I would give the mic to you.
Thank you very much, Marie. Good morning, everyone. Indeed, I was involved in developing the second part of this manifesto with 6 bullet points expressing concrete demands to the European Union institutions. And before I go into them in more detail, I would like maybe to start with 3 methodological remarks. First of all, I think training in contact zones is a very multi-layered, multifaceted topic when we are discussing it from the policy perspective, and we can address it from different angles. Marie told us that heritage is a very important concept here. Yesterday, we had a whole panel discussion on cultural participation and cultural democracy, and that's also explicitly stated in the main part of the manifesto that we are working towards strengthening cultural democracy in the EU. Then the very first word training alludes to education and arts education, and something that Marie just told us that it's important to have funding to incorporate these approaches in education. So we have at least 3, right? Cultural participation, heritage, education. And finally, I would say another perspective through which we could approach this topic is international cultural relations, emphasizing this contact word of the project. And I think that's the aspect that we chose to focus on in this manifesto. Also because right now we see that this perspective is somewhat missing, and yesterday when we had our policy workshop on the existing policy frameworks of the European Union, we saw how difficult it is to ensure sustainable international cultural relations, and they come with all sorts of challenges and difficulties. That's why we decided to focus on this aspect in the manifesto, but it doesn't mean that other approaches are not possible. My second methodological remark that I wanted to make was about vertical and horizontal approach. Yes, these demands are addressed to the European institutions, but at the same time, a lot of work also needs to be done at the horizontal, grassroots level. In policy, we very often start the conversation with the question, okay, what do we want? What do we need? And then who can give us what we want and what we need? And in many cases, the answer to that question will be institutions, funding programs, but also local communities and this horizontal level of participation. And then my final methodological remark concerns policy feasibility, I would say. Very often when we have such projects, there is a big temptation to introduce a policy recommendation that says Creative Europe should fund training in contact zones. There should be a dedicated funding line for that. Or Creative Europe should fund, cultural dialogue or socially engaged arts, you name it. There are many approaches and methodologies. But I think what's important here is that all these programs, they don't fund methodologies, they fund enabling conditions. And it's important to have these enabling conditions that would allow for funding for the plurality of approaches and methodologies rather than just one rigid particular approach. So with that in mind, we developed several demands. I don't know if you have manifestos in front of you, but we tried to leverage existing policy opportunities at the European Union level to also use the window of opportunities rather than starting from scratch. And the current opportunities that we see are, first of all, the Culture Compass. It's the new European Union strategy for culture, which has many deliverables and further actions and steps that we could use. And then it's also funding because the European Union currently develops its next long-term budget, which will cover the period from 2028 to 2034. And if we want opportunities or enabling conditions for training in contact zones to be available there, we need to influence it right now. So the first recommendation concerns the international cultural relations strategy. That's something that the European Commission needs to develop already next year, because currently we have an international cultural relations strategy, but it dates back to 2016, so it's been 10 years. It's very outdated, and we need an updated version. At Culture Action Europe, we plan to have an action group together with our members to help inform the content of this international cultural relations strategy. And already I hear many views, many visions of what should be in this strategy. And you know, there are these tensions between the concepts of international cultural relations versus cultural diplomacy, soft power is used by some politicians and promoting European values versus this strategy being rather an instrument of dialogue and exchange and listening, but also not in an extractivist way. And then we have concerns about culture and security, and this is a very complex context, and we think that learning from contact zones and this approach should be also mentioned and leveraged as part of this strategy. And then second recommendation is a follow-up for the EU delegations, the cultural relations platform, member states, so bodies that are going to implement the strategy to adopt this approach in their cultural programming. Then recommendation number 3 and 4, they concern funding. As I said, the European Union is now planning its next budget, and in particular here we are looking at 2 programs. Global Europe, the program that will fund external action of the European Union. We already have the proposal made by European Commission on the table, and it's possible to fund culture action through this program. It's mentioned in the references, but still at Culture Action Europe, we say name, place, fund. So for culture to be really prominently featured in the program, it should be properly named as the name of some structural component. It should be properly placed. It shouldn't be just a horizontal principle. We need some dedicated structural component with its governance, with its work programs. And finally, fund. It should have dedicated particular funding. And that's what we were advocating for here, to have a dedicated component for culture in the Global Europe program. And then Agora EU, that is the successor of the Creative Europe program, which will merge Creative Europe and CEV, Civil Society, Equality, Rights and Values program. And we already have an objective on international cultural relations in Agora EU. But again, yesterday during our conversations that we had, we've heard from our members that the definitions and the framing of international cultural relations and cooperation in Creative Europe and in Agora EU can sometimes be very restrictive and cannot allow the participation of organizations from third, non-associated countries. Countries cannot participate in Creative Europe or Agora EU. That sort of contradicts contradicts the very point of international cultural relations. That's why we explicitly mention it in point 4, and then 5. Yeah, point number 5 is dedicated to it, and we say that the principles of contact zone and diversity, multivocality, intercultural mediation, democratic participation. That's how we frame international cultural cooperation here. And finally, point number 6 also leverages those deliverables, those actions of the culture compass that are related to cultural heritage. There are several important points, yeah, Marie mentioned that it's really a very important aspect of training in contact zones. We believe that the European Commission, while working on these deliverables, should adopt for different actions related to cultural heritage. And if you look at this list, you may see something weird, because there are only 6 points, and usually we go with number 7 because it's a beautiful number. And indeed, at the beginning there were 7 recommendations, but then one of them was cut to make space for the rest of 6 to make sure they fit. Since we are having now with you very open but also exclusive dialogue, I'm going to reveal like a bonus recommendation that was drafted. It was about the inclusion of this approach in the work plan for culture of the Council of the European Union. So we talked about the Culture Compass, which is a strategic vision also drafted by the Commission. We talked about funding programs, but also there is Council of the European Union, which represents member states, national governments, and they every 4 years they adopt a work plan on how they cooperate, exchange best practices and experiences, and we believe that they should also adopt this approach in the work plan for culture, in the section on international cultural relations, and ensure more spaces for better exchange of experience and knowledge sharing and peer learning among member states. So 7 recommendations. I'd say they're quite time-bound. I don't know if they would be relevant in 10 years or 5 years. So now we have the window of opportunities that we're gonna leverage, and we need to act now. But then I also like that this is a manifesto, and it has very strong like preamble and main part, visionary and values-driven, and then we have concrete recommendations that can be achieved in a specific timeline. So that's it from my side. Marie, do you want to?
I think we can continue with the second program, yeah?
Solidarity for the 7th recommendation.